This is Walter Davis with the Citizens Internet Television Network in progress in San Diego. And right now I have the honor to be interviewing Dr. David Campt. And David, tell me about you, your book, and your enrollment with the International Association for Public Participation.
Sure. I recently published an article in their journal, and the article was called Talk Through the Hand. And it basically is about a new trend in dialogue, which is using these electronic response devices to integrate that in with dialogues in small meetings or large meetings. So for example, most people have seen the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And you know that have that lifeline where if the person doesn't know, they ask the audience, everybody votes on 4 answers. Well, those devices that allow the audience to enter an answer are of great use to facilitators of small groups or even a very large groups, because you can ask a variety of types of questions. You can ask people a fact question like you saw in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but moreover, you can ask people demographic questions. Who's in this room? How many people in this room are of a certain age? Or, or what's the age distribution, or what's the income distribution, or things that you can't see. You can ask people experience questions. How many people here have health insurance? How many people here have seen an act of discrimination in the past week? How many people, whatever that might be. You can ask opinion questions. So important. What do you think of the current healthcare debates? What do you think about the U.S. policy on global warming? Whatever it is, you see a range of responses. And those responses can help a facilitator guide the conversation. Okay, wait a minute. You really think that the healthcare proposals are really bad. Why do you think that is? Okay, got it. You folks think that they're really positive. Why do you think that is? And so from a facilitation standpoint, these devices are tremendously helpful. And I do not understand at all how come the whole field doesn't adopt them. It amazes me, because they transform what a meeting is. And I'll tell you other ways you can use them, but they're so helpful. So I'm here to promote their use. I happen to use one company called Turning Technologies, but I don't sell that. I just think that they're the industry leader. But I just find that as a general matter, these things are so helpful, and I'm just here to spread the gospel of audience participation in meetings.
Wow, now that's more than a couple of mouthfuls what you said there.
Did I go on too long?
Oh no, that was great. I wasn't ready for you to stop. But one question I have is, when the audience responds using these devices, is there a modicum of confidentiality? In other words,
it's completely anonymous, right? That's part of the value, right? So suppose you're in a meeting of managers. It could be 15 managers, it could be 20 managers, and the boss wants to know, how's the morale going? Think of the difference between, okay, how's morale? And how many people in that group would say, oh, the morale's fine. Oh, morale's great. It's just fine. Versus you can actually vote. There's a spectrum, right? From really, really bad to really good, and it's anonymous. You don't know who voted what. You get a different response. So part of the value of the audience response keypads is not only can everybody participate. At so many meetings, you go to a meeting and you're just sitting back and waiting, and a couple people speechify, and it's not participatory. In this, no matter how big or small the meeting is, everybody gets a say, and that say is anonymous. So you get a much clearer picture of what's going on. Not only is the picture clear, but everybody sees the same picture. You know, because so many times at a meeting, you'll hear people say, well, I really think that what's happening is this, and that's what I'm hearing. Well, maybe that's not really what they're hearing. They have their own agenda. With the audience response keypads, everybody votes, and everybody sees instantly what the vote is. And that's why I think for so many reasons, it's a transformative thing about meetings. So yes, it is anonymous, and that anonymity can be very, very helpful in the process of conducting a meeting that gets at the underlying truth that's dividing people and helps them find the opportunity to work together for good.
So we're talking about audience response keypads, and this is what you have here.
Right. These are like, again, I happen to use a company called Turning Technologies, but there are many companies that make them. And in fact, there's one company that makes products that you can use cell phones, and you get a subscription service, and so everybody is walking around with a keypad. I think that this company's products are the best products, but again, I don't sell them. I just happen to use those. This happens to be a handheld receiver. So I've done this at art events or art shows. You go around with a group of people, you look at art, and you say, okay, let's ask 3 questions about that piece of art. How much did you like it? How much did you think other people will like it, and how well will it do. I mean, you can see the response right there. Now, usually though, you project usually you're not walking around. You're in a conference setting, and you project the questions. Everybody can see the questions, and people can choose their answer or multiple answers. If you're trying to have people look at what are the key factors in this problem that we want to talk about or that we need to think about, and then you show them a list of 9. They can choose how many ever you want, and we can say, oh, we all think this, and then that can be the guide of the conversation. So again, I just find them tremendously helpful. And then not even just then, like I've used them at birthday parties. You know, I just did that last weekend. Somebody had a birthday party, and we constructed a set of questions. You know, and I'm just trying to like if you were a car, what kind of car would you be? So imagine you got all your friends gathered around celebrating your birthday, and we asked that question: if he was a car, would he be a sports car? Would he be a all-terrain vehicle? Would he be a luxury car? Or would he be a minivan? And so people can vote, and then you ask a couple of people why that is. It's a whole different way of people getting together as a group. I've done them at high school reunions or college reunions. So, you know, what do you think was the most irritating song from 1977? Was it Disco Duck? Was it You Light Up My Life? Or was it A Fifth of Beethoven? And the people vote, and you can hear the song or not. And I'm just saying, it's a fun way of being together as a group. So I just really want to let people know there is a whole new way for people to be together. Because in that situation, I get to be me, and I get to see where I am as a community. And it transforms what a meeting is. And so that's why I think that it's so valuable. And I don't understand why people don't share these things. I mean, they still cost some. Of course, the cost is going to zero over time, and the cost goes to zero if you own them, and the more you use them, the less they cost per use. But people can share them, people can ship them.
Can you talk about that? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Can you talk about the cost? What would that be?
Sure.
Give me an example.
Again, there are many companies that sell them. I happen to use Turning Technologies. They sell the refurbished ones, the last price list I saw, they sell for about $50 a piece, plus the receiver and the software at about $700. So there's that. But again, people can share them, right? And because they're so small, about the size of a credit card, you can ship them, right? So if I'm me and my colleague in Philadelphia, we're both facilitators and meeting managers. We're not having meetings every day. When one of us wants to have them, then I ship them to him, and he uses them. They're not big and bulky. They used to be really big and bulky. So there's that. They're used to you can rent them. I even rent them myself. But usually when I try to rent them, I rent them with me or one of my colleagues to help you integrate them into the meeting. The keypad company, Turning Technologies, they'll rent them to you for, I think they're down to almost $3 per keypad per day. That's really, really inexpensive. But they're a keypad company, great keypad company, but they're not a facilitation organization. My company, the DWC Group, that's www.thedwcgroup.com, Dialogue, Wisdom, Collaboration, what that stands for. What we do is we offer the keypads plus expertise in how to make a great meeting experience. Because sometimes you want to ask fact questions, right? Sometimes you want to ask experience questions. Sometimes you want to ask opinion questions. Sometimes you want to ask demographic questions. So what we do is to help people think about how do you sequence all that to create a really, really inclusive, productive, engaging meeting experience that produces results. But again, the keypad company can rent it to you for cheap, but with my expertise, my company's expertise, and my colleagues around the country, ours is in thinking through how does this affect, how do you use this strategically in a meeting. We consider ourselves meeting strategists. What we do is to try to, meeting planners are important because you have to have a meeting that it needs to be a nice room, the AV needs to be in place, you need to have those accoutrements, but as a meeting strategist, what we do is to think about how do you structure a process that meets the objectives of the meeting and takes advantage of all the wisdom in the room and makes people feel included and engaged and gets the best out of them. Because in my personal opinion is all of us are smarter than any of us. So the question is, how do you construct processes to make sure the wisdom of the group is distilled and lifted up to its highest level? The keypads are key to that, but they're not the only thing in that.
So yeah, I'm sorry. So you would ensure that the correct questions get asked. You would help design the questions, in other words.
Right. Right, design the question, but as a meeting strategist, it's bigger than that. I mean, if I'm designing somebody's conference, then I'm saying, okay, what are your objectives for the whole conference? What does it make sense to have first, second, third, in terms of a whole flow? The keypads become a part of that, but I was doing meeting strategy work before I bought my own keypads. So what I'm trying to convey is that there's meeting strategists try to help people think about how do you organize a meeting or a whole conference in a way that gets the objectives that you want out of it and takes advantage of the fact that you spend all this money to get all these people at the meeting. So many conferences or meetings, most people, most of the time, are just sitting back and listening. And they might be grumbling on the inside or talking to their friend, but they're not really participating. And so you're not really taking advantage of all the brain power that you have spent hard-earned organizational money on gathering. My job as a meeting strategist is to figure out how do you structure a meeting or a whole conference to take advantage of all that. Now, as I've said, the keypads are a key to that because the keypads provide you in one moment in time to gather everybody's perspective in that room. So they're a critical part, but not the only part, because you still want to figure out ways to have people talk to each other effectively to mine those conversations, right? If I set up a process where we're all meeting in a conference room or in a ballroom, you want to figure out a process by what's the conversation that needs to happen so that we all have a good conversation, and then we figure out a way to extract that, feed it back to the group so that they can see what they think and move forward. So I've designed meetings for 4,000 people. You know, everybody's talking in a group, down to meetings of a small board of directors. So it's as a meeting strategist, I just try to think what's the best way to do the right sequence of things so that you get the best brain power, the best of the brain power of this group.
So this would be very effective in a discussion on something like race, for example. People could actually be very honest in terms of what their feelings are without being threatened. Now, if you had 100 people, would you need 100 keypads?
Well, yes. I mean, you want to figure out a way to make sure everybody gets a chance to get their voice in. But on the race thing, I do a lot of race work too. Not the only thing I do. I mean, my PhD is in city planning. My specialty when I studied that was looking at issues around the diversifying institutions. How do you make institutions more responsive to the demands of diversity? After I finished my PhD, I went to work for the Clinton White House for the race initiative. He had the Clinton race initiative, and my main job was to design town meetings and to write dialogue guides and all that. So I have a lot of background in doing race stuff, and although it's not the only thing I do by any means. So I just wanted to make the point that in particular, in some conversations that are more sensitive, what's particularly important, not only that everybody gets a voice, but that you have a human scale conversation so that people can express their views. So the anonymity in a big group is important, but the face-to-face interaction where I'm talking to you and I'm hearing your experience and you're hearing my experience is key. In my book, this is a little book of dialogue for difficult subjects, which I co-wrote with Lisa Shirk, what we talk about are strategies for getting the best out of a dialogue situation. And so whether it be a small group dialogue or using small group dialogue techniques within the context of a large group, we talk about all of those. It's really about how do you structure a conversation so that people get the most out of it, right? So certainly race conversations are one of the more sensitive kind of conversations, and keypads in a big group are helpful with that. But the critical thing in a sensitive conversation is to have it be grounded in experience, right? So we start out with, everybody's equal, everybody's experience is equally valid. How do you ask a question that makes sure everybody feels respected? Everybody, it's a neutral question, right? So that everybody feels like they can contribute something. So then you look at what are the set of experiences that we have in the pot together, and what's the meaning of that for this condition that we came to discuss.
Mm-hmm. And I want to reiterate that the name of this is The Little Book of Dialogue for Difficult Subjects by Lisa Shirk and David Campt. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
And it's a practical, hands-on guide, and that's really something that we need in our society because we have many difficult subjects.
Sure.
And people don't talk, and they're not honest about what's going on. So what you're saying is that with your system and with your tactical and strategic planning, you're able to develop meetings in which people can express their true feelings without feelings of being threatened, and you can organize that in a way where meaningful information comes out of the situation,
right,
for the leadership.
And ultimately, and the leadership might be those people in the room, right? And so the issue is, how do you set up a conversation where you go from you start out with the fact that we probably have similar goals where we want to go as a group, but we have different experiences that influence our perceptions of what the obstacles are. So how do you establish the goals, establish common intention? How do you have a conversation that's about the different experiences we have? How do you probe beneath those experiences to say, how is it that you have that experience, I have this experience, and how does that shape how we think about what the collective challenge is? And then I'm going through phase 1 through 4, I talk about in the book. Phase 1, establish common intention. Phase 2, share similar and different experiences. Phase 3, probe beneath those experiences and understand the conditions that are making us have different experiences. And then 4, look for opportunities for action. How do we make sense of the fact that we have different experiences and different perceptions, same goals? How do we construct a set of actions that might help us achieve those goals that we have in common? So that's my sense, is that most dialogue processes really come down to those 4 phases. They might be shifted in order, but it's really about those 4 phases. And so what this book is about is trying to distill that wisdom in it's a $5 book. It's 93 pages. People can get it at littlebookofdialogue.com, dialogue with the GUE on the end, because that's a subset within my one of my websites. And you can, again, littlebookofdialogue.com. They can click through and order the book or anything else they want. But people have found it very, very useful and a very quick distillation of important dialogue principles.
And this is ISBN number 978 TAC 1 TAC 56148 TAC 551-2. Now, if someone was intentionally trying to sabotage the meeting, is there a way to break out that data? Can you identify patterns in terms of people who may be intentionally attempting to sabotage the meeting?
Well, let's talk about it in 2 different ways. If we're talking about a small group meeting, right? People can act out in a meeting. People sabotage it without intentionally try to sabotage it, right? Because that's why you have guidelines that you try to get the group to agree to at the beginning. Nobody's going to dominate the meeting. We're all going to listen. We're not going to attack each other. And then but that becomes somewhat self-regulating. If people stray from that, then they start getting feedback from other people. Well, wait a minute, we're not really adhering to the guidelines here. So social pressure becomes a factor. But sometimes, not often, sometimes you have to kick people out of groups because their behavior is not in accord with what they have agreed to previously when they were setting the guidelines as a group. Now, if you're talking about large groups, the kind of town meetings we've seen on television, where some people come with the intent and purpose of disrupting the meeting, if that's what you're talking about, it's hard to deal with that in the current meeting structure, right? Remember, the structure of these meetings is a structure that's been going on since the Romans, or since before that, where everybody gets their chance at the microphone. You can say anything you want, and you can slam the person who just spoke. You can slam the person. You can call the person out their name, as they might say. The people who convene the meeting. You can do anything you want and insult people. Well, and remember, in that kind of style of meeting where everybody gets 2 minutes at the microphone, then that means that most people are spending most of their time just listening and maybe booing and hissing. In a situation, what I'm talking about, using keypads, for example, and maybe some other processes to get at the wisdom of the group more effectively. Yeah, I mean, I can individually say that I think the reason that I don't like healthcare is because Obama's trying to have a socialist takeover, but I only got 1 vote. And that's one, maybe that's offered as an option, but there are many other options offered, and I can see where the group is. Now, you can stack a meeting, you can organize to have a whole bunch of people come to a meeting, but that's what you just have to grapple with that, and there are ways to ask questions about what that is. So, for example, all these Democratic congressmen who have these meetings and they get slammed by the people who come. What if they had like audience response technology and they could ask at the beginning of the meeting, how did you vote in the last election? Not that Republican voices don't count, but I bet you that in most of these meetings that we saw on television in August, they're dominated by people whose candidate lost in the election. Now, I'm not saying that the voices don't count, but I am saying the media portrays that as citizens showed up, and they did show up, but if we saw that who came was not representative of the constituents in the district. Not that the meeting is unvaluable, but part of what the keypads do is allow you to not only know what people thought, but who they are, right? And so what would be interesting, what you got to ask the question is, for most of those people, I'm not saying that most people came to disrupt, most people came because they have how expressed concerns, but what if they saw, oh, wait a minute, our district is 45%, 40% registered Democrat, 40% registered Republican, and 20% independent, but this meeting right here tonight is 65% registered Republican, right? Well, not that you don't matter, but that puts a little bit of different spin on what we're doing tonight. And so part of what the keypads do is to contextualize a meeting, right? And you can compare who's here versus the whole community, and that backs people off a little bit. They still can express their views, but they're a little bit less high and mighty about saying we represent the people. Well, you don't represent the people in some ways, and we all are seeing that.
Well, that's just outstanding. And this is a very fascinating topic. I've never heard of this particular field, but it's very much needed.
Oh yeah, it's huge. If we're gonna have an effective democracy, we need to figure out ways for more people to get involved. What we see from the White House is the Open Government Initiative. The first thing that Obama did was called the Open Government Initiative. We just heard about that at the conference. Well, I think, and that's about more government transparency, more involvement, all these positive things. So I think the trend is in that direction. I just happen to think that these devices are an untapped leverage point to make all that happen. To make people ask questions of, what does the group think really? Who gets to control the questions? Like the keypads raise all sorts of important dynamics around participation that are important for us to think about if we're going to have a more collaborative society.
Well, those are great concepts, and I'm very glad that I had a chance to do this interview. Where are you based out of?
I actually live in two places. I live in Oakland, California some of the time, and in Washington, D.C. some of the time. So right now I'm headed back, I'm going to catch a plane soon, headed back to Washington, D.C. But I sort of split my time, it varies depending on the projects I have and other things going on. In ski season, I'm in Oakland, California, because it's 3 hours to the world-class ski slopes. And some other parts of the year, I'm in D.C. So it varies a lot. But I work all around the country and all around the world. So so one reason I can live in two places is that my work is not necessarily in either place at any particular point. So I'm moving around. So I'm available. And again, people can contact me through two different ways. Go through the littlebookofdialogue.com to get the book or learn about me and my work on diversity issues, or through the DWCgroup.com, which is more focused on my broader work. And so people can contact me and press the contact button and can reach me.
Well, this has just been a fantastic discussion, and certainly your services and expertise are needed. I hope that the next time you come to San Diego, maybe you can come on my cable television, one of my cable television shows, and we can get you.
We could have a group, brother. We could have a forum. Mm-hmm. I could come on your show. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. And we could have, I don't know how your studio is, we could maybe get a place where we could have a new type of meeting. Mm-hmm. A meeting that I call Town Hall 2.0. So imagine it's a combination of your typical meeting, but more like the Phil Donahue style. Remember how Phil Donahue used to have the audience was more involved than the current talk shows? Right. He would go back to the audience multiple times, sometimes back to the same people to get their views. Well, imagine if Phil Donahue had audience response keypads. So you can poll the group at any point, and that drives the conversation. I've done things like that. I just did something like that at Martha's Vineyard on the future of race relations under Obama, when Obama was there. So I would love to come back to San Diego and be on your show, and we could do something that's dynamic and people haven't seen and participatory and all the benefits that we talked about. So let me come on back on the show, brother.
Well, that's great, because we do have interactive internet television where people can actually respond through the internet. And right now, this conversation we're having is going around the world, and it can be viewed by over 100 different locations.
Great. So
we can certainly look at a way to mend our two technologies and skills together to make this work. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything else you want to convey to the public, in this dialogue?
My hope is that people recognize that various forms of participation, the internet, Facebook, Twitter, all matter, but we're always going to need to make sure that our meetings, when we get together face to face, that those are satisfying and inclusive and democratic. And so I just hope that we all start paying more attention to how our meetings are organized, not only to what we do in the meeting, the personal responsibility we take individually, but also how our meetings are structured, and are they structured in a way that everybody has a voice. And I think if we just pay more attention to that, we'll not only have a better society, but we'll just feel more connected to each other as a community.
Well, this is perfect. Has this ever been evaluated for voting, per se?
I don't know if you mean for official voting, electoral voting. I don't know if it has or not. But you get all sorts of. I mean, you see how hard it is for us to change our voting processes. After that disaster in 2000, we still haven't moved forward really. So I think that's a little ways away.
Okay. Well, great. This is Walter Davis with the Citizens Internet Television Network with Dr. David Campt, and thank you for joining us.